Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we talk about root pruning. So let's go. The term root pruning is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically pruning the roots of a plant. I wanted to make this video because I've been working in my garage for a number of days now, and I've been emptying out a lot of pots, a lot of containers, and I've been potting up plants. And as I've been potting up plants, I've been pruning the roots off of some of those plants so that the plants could fit inside of some of the pots that I have. And I figured while I'm out here working, we might as well talk a little bit more about this process and why you would do it, when you would do it, and which kind of plants would you do it to and not do it to. So in regards to why you would do it, one of the reasons you would prune the roots off of a plant is because let's say you bought a plant from a store or from a nursery and the roots are really circling around inside of that pot and it's really pot bound or root bound. In a situation like that, it's not healthy for the plant because it's telling the plant to keep circling its roots around and around and around and not to spread out. And ultimately, you want the plant to be able to spread its roots out, be it in the landscape or inside of a pot. A lot of people get nervous when it comes to cutting off roots or pruning roots. And I get it. It can be a little scary because you feel like you're harming your plant. But in essence, you're actually helping your plant out. In fact, you're harming your plant more by just letting those roots circle around and around as you take it out of a pot or container and then place it out in the landscape. Or if you're going to pot it up, same thing. If you're just going to pot it up with the roots circling around, that's not good for the plant. In regards to when is the best time to do root pruning, you really can do it any time that you buy a plant and it's in a nursery container, but you don't want to be doing this process if it's like the middle of summer, the heat of summer. You don't want to do it when it's going to basically cause too much stress on your plant. So a lot of times you'd be doing this, let's say in the spring or in the fall time. And if you have to do it during the summer for whatever reason, it should be fine. Just know that it will be more stressful for your plant. The biggest thing that I will say in terms of caution when it comes to root pruning, other than not doing it on a very hot day or a very cold day, is also you don't want to be root pruning a plant that has, let's say, a very long taproot, because that plant needs that one taproot. And if you're going to just chop off the bottom of the plant, you might potentially be harming your plant. So use some caution when you're pruning the roots of a plant, because a plant like this is just impatiens here. These have a very fibrous root system, I would say. It's okay if I wanted to chop off or cut off some of the roots here. But if this plant right here was something like an old-fashioned bleeding heart or a baptisia, false indigo, anything that has a long taproot to it, you just want to be very careful when you're pruning the roots. You can still do it. You just don't want to cut into that taproot. I had a great question on one of my videos recently regarding my backyard plant nursery. I have a ton of plants down there, and my plants are basically sitting on soil. And so what happens with, let's say, a pot like this that has a plant in it, as the roots start to grow bigger and bigger, the roots come out of the bottom of the pot, and the pots sit on soil. And so then what's going on is that the roots are coming out of the pot and they're planting themselves in the soil. And so the viewer had a great question. They asked, well, what do I do in a situation like that? Because I don't have any sort of plastic that's put down underneath these pots. So what I normally do in a situation like that is I'll take the plant out, usually in the fall time, because I need to divide my plants that are in my pots and I need to bump them up into bigger containers. And at that time, that's when I'm going to be pruning the roots on my plants. So when it comes to how much do you prune off or how much do you cut off of the roots on your plants, it's really up to you. There are some numbers out there that suggest maybe 30% of the roots or something along those lines. You don't want to go too crazy and give it a huge haircut with your plant, but you can be generous when it comes to pruning those roots off. So as I've started emptying out container pots, such as this window box, I've been taking annuals that aren't going to survive anyway here in the winter, and those are going to go in my compost pile. When it comes to my perennials, I've been potting them up. And they're just going to go down to my plant nursery for the winter months. I'm going to heal the pots into the ground. And then next spring, I can go back shopping in my nursery and I can fill up my pots again. And I pulled a couple of those perennials aside because they had quite large roots to them. They didn't when I planted them in the springtime, but they do now. And I wanted to show you what I'm doing with those perennial plants when it comes to pruning their roots. So this is a plant that was in one of my container pots during the summer months. It's a perennial here where I live, and it's called lamium. It's a wonderful ground cover. It does have a blossom to it. In fact, if you look over here, you'll see that the blossom has gone by, but it's especially known for its variegated leaves. And it's also known for its beautiful trailing habits. So it makes a wonderful plant in any sort of pot or container. And what I've been doing with these plants is I've been cutting them way back on the top part, because they don't need all of this top growth as we head into the fall and winter season. And I wanted you to check out the roots on this. Those are a lot of roots. And if I took this plant and put it in a pot, I would need a big enough pot to support all of these roots. But we're heading into a season where this plant is not going to be putting on that much growth. It's going to go dormant for the winter months. So what I've been doing is I've been coming in and cutting off the roots. I've been cutting off at least 1/3, if not 1/2 of the roots here. And I've also been cutting off a lot of the top growth and giving the plant a good drink of water after I've potted it up. And then this goes into my plant nursery. I'm going to show you how I do this. I'm not worrying too much about cutting at a node or anything like that. I am simply just giving this plant a good haircut. And there we go. We gave it a nice haircut. And it doesn't need all that top growth as we head into the late fall, into the winter months. Next, let's do some root pruning. So I'm just coming in here with my hand pruners again, and I'm snipping off the roots. There were many years when I used to be nervous about doing this. I think it's normal as gardeners. We just don't feel like that's natural or normal to be doing that to a plant. But look at all the roots on this plant. This plant still has plenty of roots to support itself. What I'm doing is not going to harm it. And I could cut off more if I wanted. But anyway, this is enough that I feel comfortable putting this into a pot, and then I can still backfill with enough soil around it. So let's go ahead and do that. We're just going to reuse the small 3-inch pot that I have on hand. And keep in mind, if we did not prune the roots on our plant, it would not be able to fit in this pot. I have some used potting mix. I'm just using that. And then I can go ahead and backfill. And what will happen is this plant will continue to create more roots. And then it will fall asleep for the winter months. And then next spring, it'll make more roots. And by then, I'll be ready to take this plant and put it back into one of my pots or containers. And that's a reason why that I'm not putting it in a huge pot. If I had planned on, let's say, selling this as part of my backyard plant nursery, I could definitely put it in a bigger pot. And that's definitely an option next spring. I could come in and take this plant as it's starting to grow and pot it up into a bigger pot. But for right now, since we've root pruned this plant, it is now happy in this small little pot here. This plant is ready to go. I'm just going to give it a drink of water, and then I'll end up putting it in my plant nursery. I wanted to show you this lamium right here. By the time I cut off the top growth, there's not much left to this plant, and it will flush out again next spring. But look at the extensive root system on that. If I wanted to take this and put this plant in this pot, it would be filled just with the roots. That is so not necessary. So this lesson that you've learned about root pruning is such a good thing to know when you buy a plant from a nursery and you're going to plant it in your landscape. It's okay to prune the roots on it. Or if you have plants that you're potting up for your nursery for selling to or giving to someone else, or plants that you're going to be putting into some sort of container pot, there's so many situations on why and when you would want to root prune a plant. So don't be afraid of it. Do some research if you have to. Look up the best time of year to root prune certain plants that you're thinking of, or trees or shrubs, and know that it is an option. I hope you found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.